In terms of the momentum, though, I think that, like you mentioned, Braden, they didn't pull out the win in Miami, but until that point, that was the best football they'd played all year. And then last week at Stanford, you can say maybe that is the best football they've played all year. So they're trending in the right direction, and the bye will only kind of keep that snowball rolling. As Oregon head coach Dan Lanning once said, this game is played on grass, but if it was played on paper, then maybe Ohio State would be the #1 team in college football.
The key to success is Diego Pavia, right? Against Virginia Tech's defense, especially their defensive front, he's going to have to scramble like an egg before he gets folded like an omelet.
Jaden Heisman Daniels, Malik Neighbors, and Brian Thomas may be gone, but the Tigers still have the offense to pounce on anyone in the SEC.
Again, it's hard to plug and play. We need to see it to believe it. And whereas the offense has some sort of promise with what you've brought in versus what was there last year, the defense is looking a little shaky. So I don't know what to expect there.
The problem? None of that has come against anybody with a pulse. Sure, they're 2-0 with 2 blowout wins, but they've played Austin Peay and Jacksonville State. He brought up that connection specifically. He was like, we had this great connection last year, especially on those deep shots, and they were wondering, where has that gone? Well, they've kind of found that now, and if they can keep that going in the coming weeks, I think it's only going to make Kyron more comfortable, and I think that he's only going to improve as the season goes along. You hear that? That's the boat horn of the Vanderbilt Commodores, and Clark Lee's boys are steering their way to W's on the open water. This week, the ship sails into Atlanta for a sneaky good non-conference date with Georgia State.
Last year was a struggle. They ranked 131st in total defense, 129th in scoring defense, 129th in passing defense. That's bottom 5, all 3 of those. They gave up 31 points or more to every SEC team they played, and they played UNLV last year and gave up 40.
To put it plainly, Tennessee has the best offense in college football right now. How does an FBS leading 64 points and 640 yards per game sound? I'm not going to get much nicer here, Braden. I'm going to give the coaching a D+, and there's a very, very big reason for that. Hey, in some classes, it might be a passing grade. You know what they say, D's get degrees, right? You like points? We got points. The Rebels are coming off the heels of a 72-14 win over Utah Tech, and they might just be the best team in the group of 5 this season, as Gio mentioned.
But going from 3 wins to 7 to 9 is improvement you can see on a year-to-year basis that is very, very, very promising. So even if you're not going to the ACC Championship, if you go to the Duke's Mayo Bowl, for example, or the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which would be sick because the Pop-Tart mascot was awesome last year. And I know you love your mascots, Braden.
I do. Listen, no matter the size, a Wolfpack can't squeeze an orange. They don't have opposable thumbs, after all. Book it, baby. Syracuse, -3.
West Virginia has not beaten Penn State in this rivalry since 1988. Ronald Reagan was president of the United States, and Lord knows what gas was costing back then.
I'm not sure if Connor Stallions was taking flights out to LAX last year to do some sightseeing. Regardless, we like the Trojans to take this one comfortably. Fight on with a book it, baby. USC, -5.5. Again, I think this is an easy answer. How about Ashton Genty, Boise State? Listen, we were high on him coming into the year, but I don't think anybody saw this coming. I'm just going to read off the numbers real quick. 95 carries, 1,031 yards, 16 touchdowns, 10.9 yards per carry, Giovanni Heater. He's on pace for nearly 2,500 yards and 38 touchdowns. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen. But, I mean, historic season thus far, historic pace. He's put up those numbers despite, being pulled in third quarters and fourth quarters and second halves of games. It doesn't matter that he's playing in the group of 5. He has been the best player in college football. New signal caller Avery Johnson has taken them to another level. The sophomore they call Sunshine has been lethal with his arm and his legs, racking up almost 700 total yards and giving opposing defenses nightmares.
Yeah, I got to go OH on this one. I think Ohio State wins and wins big. I don't know that they cover, but I don't think this game will be remotely close.
And I know what you're thinking. Nico Iamaleava is the headline grabber. Well, not quite. The Vols run the ball for 336 yards per game, good for 3rd in the nation. The other side of the ball ain't bad either, giving up a minuscule 4.3 points per contest. Come on, easy answer. Underperformer of the year has got to be Florida State. Preseason number 10, picked to repeat to win the ACC. They were like, oh, we got left out of the playoff. We're going to be out for revenge. They're 1-5. This team can still play ball. They rank top 20 in scoring defense and top 30 in passing defense, and are coming off the heels of a shutout win against San Diego State. On the other side, they boast the nation's 5th best rushing offense with 300 yards per game. You know, I thought that it was arguably the best game they've played under Brent Pry, kind of in a vacuum in terms of the way that they controlled the ball on offense, played good defense, forced 2 turnovers while not committing any. They ran the ball very workmanlike. 3.8 yards per carry is not going to blow anybody away, but they just were able to chip away, run the ball just as effectively as they needed to. Remember when Clemson opened the season getting steamrolled by Georgia and then everybody panicked and abandoned ship? These Tigers sure don't. Since that fateful day in August, Clemson has not just been one of the most impressive teams in the ACC, but in the entire country, particularly on offense. They rank top 6 in the league in every single offensive category, as Cade Klubnik has finally seemed to figure this thing out. He's got 14 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions, while boasting a top 5 QBR in the nation. They kind of just need to keep putting together complete performances for me to put more faith in them. If they look like they did against Stanford every week, that's an A-plus team all around, but you're not playing Stanford every week. The ACC is tough, it's deep, and it's not going to be easy from here on out. Is Kansas State the best team in the Big 12? People are asking, and for good reason. They just smacked a good Arizona team last week.
It's tough to win in the swamp, but this Miami team has what it takes. They're different this year.
We all collectively owe Pat Narduzzi an apology. We were unfamiliar with his game. After being picked to finish 13th in the ACC, Pitt is off to its best start in over 3 decades, thanks to redshirt freshman quarterback Eli Holstein. Just kind of piggybacking off of that, I was going to say, if we were having this conversation 2-3 weeks ago, I think the answer would be maybe a lot harsher. But I'm going to go with B- for KD1. He mentioned to me on Saturday in Palo Alto that he wasn't feeling like himself in the first 4 weeks of the season. I think it perfectly complements what Gio said about the team's offensive identity. Maybe they were asking him to do too much. He said he was trying to do too much. Now he's kind of back to being the Kyron Drones that we saw in the last 8 or 9 weeks of last year.
You can add pieces and plug and play, and all of a sudden you're much better, right? Virginia Tech last year, I think, is a great example. Brought in all the new guys to fill the wide receiver room gaps, but still struggled, especially at the beginning of the season, with their offensive line.
Listen, we all know Oregon has an elite roster, but considering some early season teeter-tottering, we need to see them put together a statement win in the Big Ten before actually picking them to do so.
Penn State just has the better athletes. They have a better team, returning pieces on offense, Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen. I think they're going to get it done in the end, but watch for it to be a close game. Morgantown's going to be bumping.
And then there's the cherry on top of this Allegheny-based dessert. Pitt is a perfect 5-0 against the spread in 2024. My sleeper team that's kind of shocked the world, how about the Indiana Hoosiers? Indiana was picked to finish 17th in an 18-team Big Ten. They're currently tied for first, 6-0, 3-0 in the Big Ten. They're 6-0 for the first time since 1967. My dad was 2 years old. Grab your sand goggles, because we're headed back to the desert for a Friday night fight in Tempe, as upstart Arizona State looks to play spoiler against number 16 Utah. We are hoping and praying that this week goes better than the last 2. But until then, when they call, you be sure to tell them we got it covered.